My horrible husband threw cash in my face when I asked for a birthday cake. His mother made sure he never forgot it. I've been married to Doug for 4 years, and in that time, I have never once asked him for anything expensive. I don't get my nails done. I don't go shopping for fun. I cut my own hair because the last time I mentioned wanting to go to a salon, he told me we weren't in a position to be wasting money on things I could do myself. I work 5 days a week at a vet clinic, and my check goes straight into our joint account just like his does. I pay exactly half of everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, all of it split right down the middle. So when my birthday was coming up and I asked Doug if he could pick up a cake from this little bakery near his office, I didn't think it was a big deal. The cake was $26. I even showed him which one on their website so he wouldn't have to guess. He looked at his phone, looked at me, and said, "Why can't you just make one?" I told him I didn't want to bake my own birthday cake. He said I was being ridiculous and that a box of cake mix was $4. I told him I wasn't asking for a car. I was asking for a cake. That's when he reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, grabbed a handful of bills, and threw them at my face. Not handed. Threw. A 20 and someone's hit me in the cheek and landed on the kitchen floor. Then he said, "See, that's the problem with women. You're all dependent on men and you don't even realize it." He stepped over the money and went to the garage. I stood in the kitchen looking at the bills on the floor. I didn't pick them up. I left them there and went to bed. The next morning, the money was still on the floor. Doug walked right past it on his way to the coffee maker like it was part of the tile. He didn't mention it. He didn't apologize. He asked me what was for dinner later and left for work. I picked up the money, put it in an envelope, wrote $23 on the front, and stuck it in my nightstand drawer. I went to work and bought myself a cupcake from the gas station on my lunch break. That was my birthday. Now here's the thing about Doug. He talks a big game about independence and not relying on anyone, but the man has been on his mother's car insurance since he was 16. He's 33. His mom Francine also pays for his gym membership because he told her it was part of his physical therapy after a back injury 3 years ago. The back has been fine for 2 years. He still uses the gym. She still pays for it. Francine also co-signed on his truck loan because his credit wasn't good enough to get it on his own. Every month when the payment comes out, half of it pulls from an account Francine set up specifically to help him. Doug told me once that his mom owed him that because she worked too much when he was a kid, and he basically raised himself. So in his mind, everything she gives him is payback. Not help. Not dependency. Payback. Every Sunday, Francine calls me. Not Doug. Me. She started doing it about a year into our marriage because Doug never picks up the phone, and she said I was the only way she knew what was going on. That Sunday, she called and asked what we did for my birthday. I told her nothing really. She asked what Doug got me. I said nothing. She got quiet. Then she asked me to tell her exactly what happened. I don't know why, but I just did. I told her about the cake, about what he said, about the money hitting my face. I told her about the envelope in my nightstand with $23 in it. She didn't say much. She just said, "All right, baby, I hear you." And she hung up. 4 days later, Francine showed up at our house on a Saturday morning. Doug was on the couch watching a game. She walked in with a bakery box and set it on the counter. She told me happy belated birthday and hugged me. Then she sat down across from Doug and asked him how much his truck payment was. He looked confused and said, "Why?" She said, "Just answer me." He told her $580 a month. She asked him how much of that he actually paid. He said all of it. She said, "Really? Because the $300 that comes out of my account every month must be coming from a different Doug." He told her that was different. She asked him how. He said because she offered. She said, "I offered because you told me you couldn't afford it." Then she asked him how much his gym cost. He said it was covered. She said covered by who? He didn't answer. She told him it was $45 a month for the past 3 years, and he hadn't paid a single one. Then she asked about the insurance. She said she'd been carrying him on her policy for 17 years, and every time she brought up moving him to his own plan, he told her it wasn't the right time. She added it all up out loud. $300 a month for the truck, $45 a month for the gym, $160 a month for his insurance. She said that's over $500 a month that I spend on you. Then she opened her purse and pulled out a stack of cash. She counted out $500 in 20s on the coffee table. Then she picked them up, stood over Doug, and threw them in his face. The bills scattered across the couch, across his lap, across the carpet. One of them landed in his coffee mug. Doug sat there with his mouth open and his hands frozen in the air like he was waiting for someone to tell him what had just happened. Francine stood over him and said that's what it feels like. She didn't yell. She didn't raise her voice even slightly. She said it the same way you'd tell someone the weather. That is what it feels like when someone throws money at you like you're nothing. Doug's face went red. Not embarrassed red. Angry red. He stood up and said you need to leave. Francine didn't move. She said sit down. He said this is my house. She said this is a house you pay half the rent on with a truck you can't afford that I co-signed, with insurance I carry, with a gym membership I fund, and you had the nerve to throw $23 at your wife's face because she wanted a birthday cake. Sit down. He sat down. I've never seen Doug sit down that fast in my life. Francine turned to me and said, "Sweetheart, would you mind giving us a minute?" I took the bakery box and went to the bedroom. I could still hear everything through the wall. It wasn't a conversation. It was a dismantling. Francine told Doug she had pulled all of her bank statements going back 5 years. She said the total amount she had spent subsidizing his life since he turned 18 came to just over $71,000. She said she had every deposit, every auto payment, every transfer documented in a spreadsheet she'd spent the past 4 days putting together after I told her what happened on my birthday. Doug tried to interrupt. He said that money was different because she was his mother, and that's what parents do. Francine said no. That's what parents do when their kids are in college or starting out. You're 33. You've been working full-time for 11 years. You told your wife she was dependent on men for wanting a $26 cake while I've been financing your entire adult life. She asked him when the last time he bought me flowers was. He didn't answer. She asked when the last time he took me out to dinner was. He said we eat at home because it's cheaper. She said cheaper for who? Because she knew for a fact fact, he'd gone to a steakhouse with his friend Rodney 2 weeks earlier and spent $80 on his own meal, and she knew that because she saw the charge on the credit card statement she still had access to, since she was an authorized user on his account from when she helped him rebuild his credit 6 years ago. Doug went quiet after that. Completely quiet. The kind of quiet where you know someone is sitting there calculating every lie they've ever told and realizing the math doesn't work anymore. I could hear the game still playing on the TV, some announcer yelling about a touchdown. It felt absurd, that sound filling the room while a man's entire self-image was collapsing in real time on our secondhand couch. Francine wasn't done. She asked him if he remembered what he said to me in the kitchen. He didn't answer. She repeated it for him. She said, "You told your wife that women are dependent on men. You said that while standing in a house you can barely afford, driving a truck I co-signed, covered by insurance I pay for, staying fit at a gym on my dime. She said the only person in this marriage who has ever been dependent on anyone is you, and the person you've been dependent on is me." Francine told him she was making changes. Effective immediately, she was removing him from her insurance policy. He had 30 days to find his own coverage. She was canceling the gym membership. If he wanted to work out, he could pay for it himself. And the truck? She said she was done contributing to the payment. She said she would not be pulling the cosign because that would tank both their credit scores. But the $300 a month she'd been putting into his account was finished. She said, "That's $1,505 a month you're about to lose, Doug. That's $18,060 a year. And you threw a fit over 26. I heard him start to say something and then stop, then start again and stop again. Then finally he said, "You can't just cut me off like that." And Francine said, "Watch me." She came to the bedroom door and knocked softly. I opened it and she hugged me again. She said the cake in the box was from the same bakery I'd shown Doug on the website. She said she called them and described the one I wanted and they knew exactly which one it was. Then she said something I'll never forget. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "You are worth a whole lot more than $26. And I need you to start believing that, because my son sure as hell isn't going to tell you." Then she left. Doug didn't come out of the living room for 2 hours. When he finally did, he walked into the kitchen, saw the bakery box, and opened it. He stared at the cake for a long time. Then he closed the box and went to the garage without saying a word. That night, he slept on the couch. He didn't sleep in our bed for 3 nights after that. On the 4th night, he came into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the mattress. He said, "I talked to my mom." I said, "Okay." He said she wasn't bluffing. The insurance cancellation notice had come in the mail that afternoon. I'd seen the envelope on the counter. He said he'd called around and the cheapest plan he could find on his own was $290 a month because of a speeding ticket and a fender bender from last year that Francine's family plan had absorbed without raising her rates. He said between losing the $300 for the truck, the $45 for the gym, and now adding $290 for his own insurance, he was looking at an extra $635 a month in expenses he didn't have before. I didn't say anything. He sat there for a while and then said, "I think I need to start handling things differently." I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm sorry about the cake." I didn't respond. He said, "Did you hear me?" I said, "I'm sorry." I told him I heard him. He asked if I was going to say anything. I told him there wasn't much to say. He threw money at my face over $26, and his mother had to drive 40 minutes to our house on a Saturday to teach him basic decency. I told him an apology 4 days later because his wallet got hit didn't really land the way he thought it did. He got up and went back to the couch. Over the next few weeks, Doug started making small changes. He picked up groceries without being asked. He filled my gas tank one morning before I left for work. He replaced the shower curtain that had been molding for 2 months. Small things. Quiet things. He never mentioned the money his mother cut off, but I could see it affecting him. He started bringing lunch to work instead of eating out. He canceled a fishing trip with Rodney. He stopped buying the expensive protein powder and switched to the store brand. One evening I came home and there was a small box on the kitchen counter. Inside was a necklace. Not expensive, maybe $40. A thin gold chain with a small pendant. There was no card, no note, just the box. I put it on. He saw it later and didn't say anything. I didn't either. But that isn't where this story turns. About 6 weeks after Francine's visit, I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Doug's jeans. It was from a bar I didn't recognize, dated the previous Friday when he told me he was working late. The tab was $142. 2 entrees, 4 cocktails, 2 glasses of wine. Not 1 entree and a bunch of drinks like you'd run up sitting at a bar alone watching a game. 2 entrees, 2 wine glasses. A meal for 2 people at a place with table service. I stared at that receipt for 10 minutes. I turned it over like there might be something written on the back that would explain it. There wasn't. Just the total, the tip he'd left, which was 25% by the way. Generous, more generous than he'd ever been with me about anything, and the timestamp. 9:47 p.m. on a Friday. He told me he'd be home by 10 because the project was running late. He did get home at 10:15. He smelled like cologne, which I noticed but didn't question because I was already in bed and tired and didn't want to start something. Now I was standing in the laundry room holding the something. Then I folded it and put it in the envelope in my nightstand, right next to the $23. The following Sunday, Francine called like clockwork. We talked about normal things for a while. Then she asked how Doug was treating me. I told her about the groceries and the gas and the necklace. She said good. Then I told her about the receipt. She went quiet the same way she had the first time. That long, heavy quiet where you can almost hear someone's jaw tightening. She asked me the name of the bar. I told her. She said she knew the place. It was a sit-down spot with booths and low lighting. Not a sports bar. Not the kind of place you go with Rodney to watch a game. Then she said something that surprised me. She said, "I'm not going to come rescue this one. This is yours to handle. I need you to decide what you're willing to accept and what you're not. Because I can throw money at my son's face all day long, but if you keep folding his laundry and putting on the necklace and pretending a receipt in his pocket doesn't mean what it means, then nothing I do matters." She wasn't wrong. I knew she wasn't wrong. I just wasn't ready to hear it yet. I put the receipt back in the envelope and went about my week. The next Friday, Doug said he was working late again. I said, okay. He left at 6. At 7:30, I drove to the bar on the receipt. I didn't go inside. I just parked across the street and waited. At 8:15, Doug walked out with a woman I'd never seen before. She was laughing at something he said. He opened the car door for her. He has never once opened a car door for me. Not on our first date, not on our wedding day, not ever. He walked around to the driver's side, got in, and they sat in the truck talking for a few minutes. Then he drove off. I sat in my car in that parking lot for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call Francine. I just sat there with the engine off and the windows up, feeling something settle into my chest that I can only describe as certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't come with anger or sadness. It just comes, like a fact, like gravity. I thought about the $23 on the kitchen floor. I thought about the way he'd stepped over the bills like they were nothing, like I was nothing. I thought about 4 years of splitting everything exactly down the middle while he spent $80 on steak dinners and opened car doors for someone who wasn't me. I thought about the gas station cupcake I ate alone in my car on my birthday in the parking lot of the vet clinic. And I thought about how I'd spent 4 years believing that if I just asked for less, if I just needed less, if I just was less, eventually he'd see me. He saw me fine. He just didn't care. I drove home, packed a bag with the things I couldn't replace. My mother's ring, the photo albums, the documents, the envelope from my nightstand with the $23 and the receipt. I put the bag in the trunk of my car. When Doug came home at 11, I was sitting on the couch. He said, "Hey, long day," and went straight to the shower. I sat there listening to the water run and decided I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to give him a speech. I wasn't going to cry in front of him or ask him why or tell him he broke my heart. He would turn all of it into an argument and somehow I'd end up apologizing. That's how it always went with Doug. Instead, I waited. The next morning I called Francine. I told her everything. What I saw, what I'd decided, what I needed help with. She listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, she said I'll have the guest room ready by Tuesday. I spent the next 3 days quietly organizing my exit. I opened my own bank account at a different bank. I went on my lunch break and sat across from a banker who asked me what kind of account I wanted, and I said just a checking account, just mine, just my name. She set it up in 15 minutes. 15 minutes to start a separate life. I rerouted my direct deposit from the joint account to the new one. The payroll woman at the clinic asked if everything was okay, and I told her I was just reorganizing my finances. She didn't push. I gathered every piece of mail with my name on it. I went through the filing cabinet in the office Doug never used and pulled out my birth certificate, my social security card, the title to my car which was paid off and in my name only, and the folder with our marriage license which I left exactly where it was. I copied the photos off the shared laptop onto a thumb drive, mostly pictures of my parents and my friends from before the marriage, because I realized scrolling through 4 years of photos that there were almost none of us together. No vacations, no holidays, no random Tuesday selfies, just a few stiff pictures from the wedding that my cousin had taken, and a handful of blurry shots from a barbecue at Rodney's house. 4 years and barely any proof we'd been happy. I took my name off the utility bills. I called my landlord and told him I'd be leaving and asked what I needed to do about the lease. He said since both our names were on it, Doug would have to either re-sign solo or vacate. I said that was between him and Doug. I didn't tell a single person what I was doing. Not my coworker who I eat lunch with every day. Not my cousin who I talk to every week. Nobody. The only person who knew was Francine, and she had already started clearing space in her house for me. On Tuesday morning, Doug left for work at 7:15 like he always did. By 7:45, I had the car loaded. It wasn't much. 4 years of marriage and everything that was actually mine fit in the trunk and back seat of a Honda Civic. I left my key on the kitchen counter. Right next to it, I placed the envelope, the one from my nightstand. I'd written on the front of it in black marker. Inside was the $23 he'd thrown at my face, the receipt from the bar, and a note that said, "I saw you." That was it. 3 words. I drove to Francine's house. She had coffee waiting and the guest bed was made with new sheets. She didn't ask me if I was sure. She didn't ask me if I wanted to try counseling or give him another chance. She just handed me the mug and said, "You did the right thing." Doug called me 4 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. He texted me, "Where are you?" Then, "Why is your key on the counter?" Then, "Call me back right now." Then, "What is this envelope?" I didn't respond to any of them. Around 9 that night, he called his mother. I was sitting in the living room when her phone rang. She looked at the screen, looked at me, and answered it on speaker. His voice was shaking. He said, "What's happening?" Francine said, "What do you mean?" He said she left. All her stuff is gone. There's an envelope on the counter with money and a receipt and a note that says, "I saw you." What does that mean? Francine said it means exactly what it says. He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "She's there, isn't she?" Francine said yes. He said, "I'm coming over." Francine said, "No, you're not." He said, "Mom." She said, "No, not tonight, not tomorrow. You're going to sit in that house by yourself and think about every single thing you did to get here. And when you're done thinking, you're going to realize that I am the only woman left in your life who will still pick up the phone, and you are going to treat that fact with the respect it deserves." She hung up. We sat in her living room drinking coffee and watching the news. She didn't bring up Doug again. Neither did I. I filed for divorce 11 days later. Doug contested nothing. The proceedings took 4 months. Francine helped me find a small